A podcast of one's own, challenging the status quo, keeping feminist discourse in the limelight, striving for gender equality.
All right. So this is Esther speaking. This is the third episode. I think you've already said, but it's we were gonna just talk a little bit about our favorite topics from last trimester, the first year, the first trimester of the academic year, and mine was probably the one on the topic internalized misogyny, which was originally going to be about internalized sexism, sex and sexuality, but I realized it was all three topics are so broad that it just would not fit in the session. So I remember we focused a lot about internalized misogyny. I think it was I really enjoyed that session because researching for it, nothing really new came up, but I do think it's really, I don't know, it really did put the kind of spotlight on things that I knew but hadn't really thought about, like to be so prevalent in daily life, like how to me a really big part of feminism is so much about like women's sort of view on themselves. That's it. Yeah, we're oppressed by a patriarchal society, but we're also constantly tearing ourselves and each other down, which I think is something that is really like difficult to talk about because you don't really want to kind of admit to bringing yourself down, but you do. And I think one of the things that I did talk about was the language we tend to use, or a lot of women tend to use. It's that we don't really reflect on being misogynistic, that when we use kind of, when we say things like, I don't know, what were examples, like run like a girl, or as if that's something that's negative, or I think one really common one is like, oh, I'm not like other girls. And that's one that I really thought about when I researched it as well, because it's so common that people say that I'm not like other girls because I don't do this, or maybe I prefer to hang out with boys because it's less drama. And by saying that, you kind of distance yourself from the entire gender that you're actually a part of, because and that sort of, I don't know, I think it's just really, it's kind of sad topic to talk about, at least for me, because I don't want to be that person to kind of like let my own gender down in order to bring myself up, because we're all trying to survive in a patriarchal society. So if you do say that, oh, I prefer to hang out with boys, that's kind of like giving boys even more credit and tearing down girls even more, including myself, which is just so sad.
Yeah, you were saying about the I'm not like the other girls quote, which I personally hate because I used it so much growing up. When I want to spite myself, to spite my peers, it was a sentence that I kept bringing on. And now I really want to distance myself from it as much as I possibly can, because I really, really don't like it, because of the reason that you have already pointed out. But I just wanted to pop in and say there was something like, a tweet, I think it was, or like a post on Tumblr that I read 2 days ago or something like that. I'm trying to remember it, how it said it correctly, but it's like, you can't really blame women for saying things like, I'm not like other girls, because the only characters, the only models that they've ever been, presented to, or like they've ever been shown, are bidimensional women who are either one thing or the other, but they can't hold multitudes in them. So for a young girl growing up, it's hard to understand that they are holding multitudes. They are more than what they are shown. And that can be a defining moment, a moment where you say, wait, then if I am the only woman who holds multitudes because I've never seen one before, then I am not like the other girls. And it really hit me because I said, yeah, you're right. Like, I am so much more than a person who reads book. But, and that person is definitely like any girl who is conventionally attractive is so much more than that. But by the media, by society, we are taught to see them as separates, as not possible to be united
Like
into
a multifaceted, yeah,
into one person.
I think that one, like saying things like that, like I'm not like other girls, it's dangerous because it's generalizing and it's just accepting the stereotype, like you said. And another session that we had last year was about the Madonna whore complex, kind of like the notion that a woman is either the yeah,
Can either be
So
one or the other.
one or the other, of either like a mother caring figure who's modest and like really
Virginal.
responsible, virginal, or which would be the Madonna, or the whore, which is just like the complete opposite, which would be like liberated and probably like very negatively associated as well, like really like easy to degrade, and you know, as if that's not as if someone can't be both motherly and sexual being at the same time.
So interesting from that session, I was blown away by it, was the term MILF. And, you know,
Yeah.
everyone knows the term, a mother I'd like to beep.
I like to fudge.
A mother I'd like to fudge. And yeah, how
As if that's something you have to specify, because
Yeah.
usually mothers are not.
like come on,
Fudgeable.
because mothers are completely unfudgeable. You would never fudge a mother. Yeah, because they're held to these ideals. And I was speaking to my mother about it, and I was like, my mother, and I was like, yeah, it's so surreal that you're just completely stripped from your sexuality because you cannot be multifaceted. You
Yeah.
have to be one or another and fit within this tiny box that we spoke about in the last podcast.
Yeah, I was really happy about having that session as well, because that's probably a part of it that I wanted to bring into the internalized misogyny as well. Because it's obviously not something that just other people put on you. It's your own idea of yourself as well. That, oh, but if I go too much towards this way, I'm not going to be respected anymore. And like I know that, and I've almost all my girlfriends that I've talked to as well. Like, it's a really big struggle because there's so much stigma about sexuality, and just, I don't know, just accepting having, like, being a sexual being, and still trying to fit into a world where you're trying to be professional and respected. Yeah. And they should not be hindering each other.
There's because we were talking about, like, you know, the idea of being fungible, and appetizing to people. I think I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and quote a YouTuber because that's me. It's not quoting them, but like, just, she's called Amelia Fart. If you don't know who she's I absolutely adore her. She's a personality, it's 100% truly herself, but she presents herself as an insufferable narcissist. And the, like, I don't say that, she says it about herself. And the striking things about her that make you start watching her is the fact that she only wears clothes made by her own self, which completely cover her whole body. She's been wearing a scarf for 10 years to hide her double chin, basically. She doesn't wear makeup conventionally, and she presents herself as quite an insecure person, okay? Despite this, she said, she has this video where she said, which is called How I Looked Like When I Was Normal. And it's her story of eating disorder, of internalized homophobia, of her not accepting the fact that she was a lesbian, and going through some other stuff in her life. And the striking fact is that she shows this picture where she is absolutely conventionally attractive, but the description she gives is, here I am at 16, absolutely miserable, hadn't eaten anything in 3 weeks or something that. And by looking at that, you wouldn't necessarily say it. But then the point that she makes at the end, which is what I wanted to tie myself in before going on this fan rant about her, is that she said, I spent most of my life at that point trying to be appetizing to men, trying to make myself fungible and make men want me, because I thought that was the only way that I could be worthy as a person. And once I let go of that, what you see now, it's what came out, because this is a version of myself where I actually don't care about being sexualized, where
she knows she's not doing it for someone
my
else.
main goal in life. And you can have her own opinions about her, but I think that really, like, you know, again, hit me, because I'm like, how many times do I make the conscious decision to dress myself in a way that may be uncomfortable, or just plain going in pain, you know, heels or like Spanx. I'm guilty of using Spanx in my life. And I say to myself, wait, like, that made me think of myself. Am I basing my worth as a woman on the fact that men may find me attractive in the club tonight. You know, that
I think that's like, I just get so upset thinking about it. I think this is like personally one of my biggest things about gender equality is how different it is, the way the weight that we put to appearance. And that's something that like I've struggled so much with it as well, with how you see yourself and body image issues, and how it's literally just sanctioned by our cultures to hate on ourselves. And when you said that, how often do you kind of dress in an uncomfortable way? Like that's one thing that I've tried to do in the past couple of years has been to challenge myself to do to do that, but like flip the coin, to like not physically uncomfortable, but like if there's something that I'd like to wear and I feel like, oh, I'd be uncomfortable in this because I think maybe people wouldn't find me as attractive, or it's a little bit out there, it's like maybe not what people would like, then I'm like forcing myself to do it just to try to like see, am I actually like gonna die if I don't get the approval of other people for wearing this? And I mean, that is kind of liberating, but that's about checking your internalized kind of view on yourself as well.
Yeah, and going back to the point of basing your worth on your sex appeal and on the male gaze. And I remember talking to one of the girls in my class in first year, and I was just blown away and heartbroken. And she had just turned 18, just started clubbing, and I was telling her that I was a feminist, and she said that she didn't identify as a feminist because feminist issues don't affect her. And so I was listing off, as you would, start arguing for the cause, listing off all of these issues I think might affect her. And one of them was unsolicited groping in clubs. And she said that she honestly didn't mind it, and that if a guy didn't grab or smack her ass on a night out, then she knew that there was something wrong. She didn't look good. And this just blew me away, absolutely blew me away. That's so heartbreaking that at 18 years old, you base your self-esteem and the way that you look and your enjoyment on a night out as if you're sexually assaulted. And yeah, that just blew my mind. And we need to start speaking about it. Well, we are, but talk about it for what it is, because it's sexual assault. It's not just like, oh, a guy grabbed my ass in the club, how funny it is. Ridiculous.
yeah, I feel like that's an experience, like not experience, but like a train of thoughts that I could kind of sort of not relate to necessarily, but I have to check myself from not thinking that, where like I'm a third year. I haven't been in a club in a while because life. But when I did go first, second year, the idea that I wasn't appealing to anybody during the night, I don't necessarily mean by groping because I always find that disgusting, but in other ways, like nobody approached me, nobody tried to talk to me. I would consider it in some of my lowest self-esteem moments as a waste of my night, as a failure of the night, as if I should have just not gone out. Because if a man is not even gonna, look at me, then what is even the point? And then I know it sounds cheesy to say I've grown up from it, but I actually have grown up from it, where I'm like, no, that's not your point. That's not what it matters,
Yeah, for me, like, I generally have very high confidence and stuff like that. But
Oh,
when
yeah. You go,
but
girl.
when
We need more of
sometimes-
this.
Yeah, sometimes when I like have like my low moments, I do sometimes think like I'm 21. I've never been in a relationship. Like, does that mean I'm unattractive? I normally bounce back quite quickly. I'm like,
Yeah.
F this shit. Like, what am I thinking? But it does like, it's not necessarily something that's like, I don't know what point I'm trying to make. But to me, it was always like, I always thought that it was like a confidence related thing, and it doesn't necessarily mean to be one. Like, even though I'm like super confident in practically everything, even like everyone has their low moments and everyone thinks I'm not attracted to someone. And yeah, I just think that's awful. Like, you shouldn't think you're not attractive just because you haven't been in a relationship. First of all, not everyone likes a relationship, but that's a whole another topic. But like, yeah, we shouldn't base like our self-worth and like how much we love ourselves just because someone else like validates our feelings.
And I think that's incredible. I think, honestly, you must be an anomaly, because
Yeah,
it's
that's
so
amazing.
rare, and it's so beautiful to hear when you actually hear somebody go, yeah, you know what, I am completely confident in all these aspects in my life. And I feel like it is like uphill trudge that I'm aware of, and I find it really exciting that I'm like, you know what, I'm going to have to continue working on myself for the rest of my life, and I find
Yeah.
that exciting, that I'm going to continually grow. But when I look at my low moments, or you get like a photo pop up on Facebook from like a year ago, and I'm like, oh my god, the way I hated myself
Oh
at
god,
that
that's
time, and it just takes
you know they
back
have
to that
the
time.
like
It's horrible.
the little throwback thingies on Facebook and Snapchat and stuff, and they show, oh, this is what you did 2 years ago. I'm like, oh my god, like I really like snap back to a mindset when I see old pictures of myself. I'm like, wow, that was so bad. Like I saw a meme about it where it was like, it was not really a meme, it was like one of the like text posts where it was like, oh, that amazing feeling when you realize you don't have to hate yourself all the time, and you've reached the point where you know that you don't like that you're. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like really wholesome and cute. And I was like, yeah, like you've reached a point where you're actually content with being not perfect all the time and always evolving.
I just want to quickly make a point that I cannot relate to this feeling because in 2018, so my second year of university, I had a rule where I refused to have pictures taken of me. So if you go on my Instagram, there's an exact
way.
point where I decided to, unless it was with other people and then I would post it, there's an exact point during this summer where I went, why am
I remember
doing
that.
this?
I was so happy.
And I was like, no, this is stupid. And I started taking pictures of myself again. But even if you ask my friends, they would always have such a struggle forcing me to take pictures. Even my mom, she'd be like, let's take a selfie. I'd be like, no, I'm hideous. Let's not do that. So for an entire year, my kids are not going to be able to see any pictures of me when I was 19 because there aren't any publishable or published.
On that note, yeah, I feel like especially social media has pushed it a lot more. Like we crave for likes and validation. I don't have Instagram and etc. And I haven't changed my Facebook profile picture in the last 3 years. But I know every time I have actually uploaded something on Facebook, I'm like, how many likes did I get? How many people see that? And it's not like then I compare it to someone else who has 100 likes, and I'm like, of course they got 100 likes and that like so pretty. And I'm like, that's literally there's no relation. They probably just know more people than I do. But it's still that
Yeah,
thought
there's
that
no
goes through your head.
correlation.
Yeah, like you just think like, oh my god, like I only got 30 likes. People don't like me.
Yeah.
And I think that social media has pushed it like so much more than it was like
And
ever
it's got
before.
nothing to do with either. I know we've also spoken about this concept of conventional beauty and how it shouldn't be a thing, but it is. And even like for example, that like Victoria, who is of course like completely gorgeous to everyone and completely conventionally attractive and like ticks even all of those boxes of what you have to fit into in society, can actually go through that. And that's why again you have to be liberated, because regardless of how you look, you're never, society is going to continue to tell you that you're never good enough. And we're bombarded with images on a daily basis from every single source telling us that we aren't good enough, and it is a huge struggle to compete with that.
Yeah, I think I'm like, to me, it's also especially the notion of like, or like just like the ideal, conventionally beautiful woman. It's so like tightly bound to the like society's kind of idea of what woman, like what is feminine. I thought it was like just I thought about it as well when Victoria talked about like being in a club environment. 'Cause I had the weirdest thing happen to me, or I found it really weird. I think it's just so strange. But it was one night when I was out. I'm gonna go on a slight little tangent, but it's just a really like to me just a baffling story. I was out at a club, and it was right after I'd cut all of my hair off. Literally had such short hair, and that was one of the things that I did just to challenge myself. I was like, that's so scary. I don't want to do it. I'm not gonna look like a woman anymore. But I tried it, and like I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I felt really, really feminine in it as well. Like even if I hadn't done, maybe that doesn't really matter. But I went out to the club and I was dancing. Like got like started kind of like getting with this guy, and then he told me he started like feeling me up, and then he was like, you know what? Can I just check that you're a girl?
Shut up.
And like there's no way that he didn't know. Like you'd look at me in my short hair, you'd see I was a girl. Like I mean, assuming that I like
Identify
that
as
I
one.
identify as one. But like I was wearing a skirt and like a tank top and like here, look at my face, and I'm like that was not about him asking if I was a woman. That was about him trying to use like I was so shocked. I was just like, okay, like f off. This is not happening, because you're just using this like trying to make me self-conscious about my femininity to act in a predatory way, and sort of like I thought it was so weird. I don't know. It was just like a really weird experience that I thought tied into like appearance and femininity and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm totally blown away by that story.
Yeah,
That's
same.
surreal because you know he knew you were a woman and then decided it was like he used it as some
like
sort
a
of
joke.
tactic or to sort of like make you feel worse about yourself so you'd be more likely to get with this idiot. But one of the what brings me back to one of the sessions that we done the very first year of the Society, Gender and Nightlife, and the things that go on in clubs are just so surreal that it's like it's completely detached from the rest of society, where suddenly you can sexually assault people, and that was another thing that blew away some of our male members, as I spoke about in the last podcast, that when they joined, that they couldn't believe that when we go out, all of us have had the experience of being sexually assaulted, and it's not uncommon for a guy to just come and like place a boner on your ass when you're dancing and things like that, and yeah, and it's just so surreal, but it's become so normal that even right now, like this is a really serious issue we're talking about, and we're mad about it, but we're still talking about it quite casually because these things happen and they're so common in society.
I think my experience, my thought, like as a feminist, sometimes it creates some sort of like, it guilt trips myself. Because it's a situation where I make a thought about myself or I make a thought about another woman, which I think is even worse. And then I immediately have to go, do you realize the internalized misogyny that you are going through at the moment? Or are we
You
just going to
actually have
ignore that? You know,
recondition
are
your
we going to
brain.
unpack that within our own selves? Or are we just, you know, some stupid thoughts that, you know, you get bombarded with, oh my God, she's hot. Or why would she wear that with that body? And then immediately have to go, what was that? Because I think the problem with that internalized misogyny is that we are so used to it as a society that when you do actually like bring it up, people have so many excuses for that. Oh, I'm not a misogynist. Like if I'm saying that she shouldn't wear that with that body, it's just because, you know, I like
Because
fashion and it's like
compliment her,
it complimented her. Or, you know, I'm just saying you should put a bit more like of blush on your cheek, not because I think women should wear makeup. It's just because you would look more lively. And it's like, okay, but why would she? Does she not look lively enough by being alive with her own skin color? You know, it's such like a complicated issue in the fact that it's sometimes it makes me like a bit gives me into a bit of an existential crisis. I'm like, will it ever be solved, or will my daughters, granddaughters have to fight the same way that we are fighting at the moment? And I say the word fight, but I obviously don't mean hitting people wise, but you know,
But yeah,
philosophically fight people.
that level of consciousness and awareness is the first step, isn't it? Like the revolution starts with yourself and the individual. And when we were doing the body confidence and body image session in the first semester, and we sort of like had little pacts that we could have with one another, and depending on how your own self-image was, and there was one that I had done that had been quite successful for myself, was to no longer say anything negative about my body out loud, because I'd realized it had become quite an issue for me, and I'd been doing it all the time, the self-deprecation. And then so I done that, and then I became aware when not doing it outside that I was even just mentally doing it in my mind. You know, you walk past the mirror and you're like, oh, fat bitch. And then suddenly you're able to separate yourself from it, and you're like, oh my God, this is so internalized that my brain
Yeah.
is just like shouting out abuse at me essentially. And you catch yourself doing that with other women in the street, or, you know, like couples walk past and you're like, oh, he or she's too hot for that person, and little things. But that level of like consciousness to be like, these are not my beliefs, and the awareness that like society has like gotten so deep into your psyche that you have these internalized misogynistic viewpoints and like misandrist viewpoints as well. It's surreal.
Yeah, I think just like I agree with both of you on like the topic that you said that you brought up before, Victoria, about makeup. It's like just another point. It's like, yeah, but would you ever tell a guy put on some blush to look a little bit more lively? Like, because the expectations are so different. Like no one even it's not that they don't look tired, it's just that they're allowed to socially. It's not like no one even considers it. And when it comes to like talking down on yourself, I think having that as a little pact to yourself to not it takes a long time to get those thoughts, the thoughts about your own body that are negative, out of your mind. But when you stop saying it out loud, you do become more aware of when it happens inside as well. And I think it essentially stops you from doing it to other people as well. You don't want to talk down. You don't value anyone else on what they look like. And that's essentially where you want to go, you know.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point that this is, you know, a lot of people make the excuse of this is not really a feminist issue. This is more like a self-confidence issue. The fact that you couldn't post pictures of yourself is about you. It's not a feminist problematic. But I really do want to stress the point that it's absolutely a misogynistic thing.
100%.
It is brought on by what we are taught to find ugly about ourselves. You know, I think we mentioned in one of our sessions the fact that women are cocky and bitchy if they are confident, and those are not qualities to look for in a girl. But we are taught that, you know, if you're a bit insecure, if you show to a man that you don't really like yourself, then that's attractive. I'm sure everybody has seen those Tinder screenshots where men have been like, oh, you're beautiful. And the girl replies, well, thank you, I know. And the man just goes off with like absolutely like misogynistic point or just like straight up offensive points. But that's because that's why I'm saying, I think, I don't want to say that all of the insecurities that we have are caused by misogyny, but I do think that 85% of the insecurities that I personally have are caused by that. And it's not making excuses for myself because I actively work against them. It's just trying to understand where they're coming from. And they do definitely come from you know, what I'm being told, what I see, you know?
Because you're not born with self-hatred. You're, like, this has been imposed. And, yeah, when you start to develop, you know, when you're going through the age when you're starting to develop and then you grow self-conscious. But, yeah, my little brother, he's 11 years old, he said to me the other day, he was like, Nicole, you know you could pass for a 14-year-old. And I was like, why is that? And he was like, because you're short and you've got acne. And he was like, and only kids going through puberty have got acne. And, you know, a little bit of me just wanted to slap him with my strong hand across the face. And then the other part was, no, and I don't want to teach him that having spots is bad. That, like, so what if I've got these red blotches on my face? And that's something I'm trying to come to terms with in my own way. But it's not inherently negative. This is just the societal beauty construct that's been imposed upon me to hate my skin when I've got little red dots on my face. It's ridiculous.
I know, I think that's something that I can relate to that when you're like, you catch yourself, especially in situations where you hear other people talk down. If you reach the point where you won't talk down, but you hear someone else do it, it's kind of leveling up to speak against that as well. You don't have to be too argumentative about it, but it has occurred several times for me as well. Like, or at least someone will say something like, oh, that's so unhealthy. They're just going to gain so much weight. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so let them. Who cares? Why is that a bad thing? Like, just put that comment there because it's none of your business. And it's not a negative thing to gain weight. And it's, I don't know, like, that's just, you don't have to start a full-blown argument where you're like, why do you think this? Your opinions
Just
are wrong, blah, blah. Just like a
comments.
slight little kind of reminder that, wait, like, there's another, like, could it be in a different way? does that necessarily have to be a bad thing? And also, do you have to have an opinion about it?
I
You
think
don't
the
have to challenge us
questioning is
with a
perfect.
question, but if you just like drop a little comment, like, okay, yeah, maybe, maybe they will gain weight, and then move on with it as if that's not a thing. I think that like dropping those little things are eventually pretty powerful in day-to-day conversations with other people that haven't really gotten as far.
And when we done our outreach session, that we'll cover at some point, I'm sure, that just little comments like that can go so far. And just the beauty of asking somebody, why do you feel like that? Because we all, well, we're talking about internalized misogyny,
Yeah.
and we've all been guilty of coming out with things that we regret that we then realize on hindsight are completely stereotypical or misogynistic. But just to be like, oh really, so why is that, or why do you feel that way? And then you're not being argumentative at all. And sometimes that's all you need, is just for the person to stop for a minute and actually question why it is they've said that. And that was my defining moment that I wrote about when I first identified as a feminist. Was I was like, oh, like women are gorgeous, but like fuck being in a relationship with one of them because they're such hard work.
And then someone asked, why do you feel like that?
And that was the first time I'd ever actually been pulled up, because all the circles I'd travelled in before had been anti-feminist.
We'd just be like, yeah.
People here would be
such
like,
drama.
oh yeah, oh my god, it's so much easier to be around guys. And yeah, she just sort of like pulled me up in this way where she was like, oh my god, yeah, because all women are so irrational and they're all ridiculous, and just sort of like done like a parody of me. And that was the first time where I was like, oh yeah, that is whack.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Why do I
What
say
have
that?
I been
Talking about?
I think it's like that for so many people as well. You just throw out these different like comments about things, and you don't even realize, you don't recognize that it's perpetuating really like harmful structures.
Because like you don't realize, because you have been told the same things and you've been taught to accept them as a normal comment. So when you make it about somebody else, you can't even check yourself, because you don't know that that's problematic, If all your life you've been told you look fat in that dress, and you've been taught that that was a good thing to say, a normal thing to say. If you think, oh, she looks fat in the dress, you don't even realize how harmful that is for both you and the person that you're thinking about.
Yeah, like hopefully we'll reach a point where you can think something like that, because it's still a visual thing that you see and you can process that thought, but you don't immediately associate it with something negative. Because to me, I think is what we're taught and what we're fed by like companies trying to sell us ideas that we need things that we don't need, and the notion that women are sold and kind of like pressed on the most is that we need to be less and that we need to shrink and not take up space, and that's both
That somehow smaller is bigger.
Yeah, and that's both with like your personality and the space you take up in conversations and in businesses, but also physically. Like women are supposed to be tiny, small little things that don't like, that makes no sense. Why is less of you better? I don't get it.
Yeah, it makes no sense at all. I kind of forgot how my point was relevant. But I was going to talk about, again, with my little brother being so young. Yeah, I think it was just I recalled him making a fat comment or something like that. And, he's really young, and that's just a sort of like general banter or like patter of like his friends at school. And it's been such a privilege for me being able to catch that with him when he's young, and actually sit down and explain to him on a rational level and a respectful level, and like respect his intelligence, that why this is problematic and why it's wrong. And yeah, and he's like really flourishing into like a brilliant little feminist, and I love it. Like
I love it.
Like I think I've told you before that I'm like the second oldest of 7 siblings. There's loads of us. And it was Mother's Day, and we've had 2 trampolines out in the back garden. And my little sister was like, yeah, let's play boys against girls. We'll play dodgeball. And he stood up and was like, no, that's sexist, because boys and girls are equal, so we should change it up. And I was like, yes!
So
At like
cute.
9 years old, I was like, this is amazing.
I love that. It does start early. Like you have to kind of like start. And that's so cute.
Which is why the
love
new
it.
Gillette ad's brilliant.
New Gillette ad. I love it. I hope everyone listening has either watched it or will now watch it, the new Gillette ad. And please drop us a message if you find it offensive, because I genuinely want to know how people can find it offensive. I think it's such an amazing ad. Just
Or
like
come on the podcast to tell us why. We'd love to chat about it.
yes,
Yeah, that's actually the point I was
Amazing.
gonna make. Like, if any of you, no, not your, like Esther's, if any of you actually knows why it's wrong, please message us, because the five of us literally don't have a clue, and we don't mean this in a patronizing way, or it's just we genuinely can't grasp how it's wrong. So, yeah, message
Yeah.
us, please.
Just to clarify, the Gillette ad is basically like throwing the message out that men can do better and don't have to be like engaging in toxic masculine, like in like a macho culture kind of behavior. And that's just a really nice message. It's kind of like, yeah, men can be loving and nice and like caring to each other and women without losing their masculinity. And that's a beautiful message, and it's true, and it's just like liberating to everyone. But apparently it's really offensive to some men, and I don't understand that.
So yeah, please let us know if you do know. So I think we actually had a topic planned, and like another three topics planned. But I think this concludes our session on internalized misogyny. Yeah, this has been so lovely, and I'm really excited to make some more podcasts.
It would be amazing. We're gonna have a session as well on body image, and yeah, I can't really remember what our next sessions are gonna be like, but we will have like a full session on it. So
Yeah, I just want to plug the fact that we like some of the topics we're gonna talk about are, for example, how brands utilize feminists to make more money. We were gonna talk about the fourth wave feminism and other topics like that, men's rights, for example, as well. So also the other way around, so capitalist sexism in media and advertisement, which are all very interesting topics that we did cover last term. However, if you really have strong opinions about this topic, do not be afraid of messaging us and say, yeah, I actually want to be on the podcast to talk about one of these topics, because we love when our members get engaged, and it just makes us very happy and proud.
Yay! Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. You're amazing.